Yo, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another Battle for Azeroth video. Today we have something that I'm actually really excited to talk to you guys about, and that is going to be the Destruction Warlock, which in my opinion is one of the best design classes that has hit the alpha. And I think that in Battle for Azeroth, a lot of the Destruction Warlocks are going to be happy with the changes that have happened. A lot of quality of life changes, a lot of things that really seem to make sense with the class. I didn't really get a chance to play much Destruction Warlock in Legion, since most people played Affliction, but playing the Battle for Azeroth version inspired me to go back and play the Legion version, and seeing the difference is actually pretty crazy. So there's quite a few things that are happening, and not so much in the baseline ability stuff. There was actually a couple abilities that were removed, and in my opinion, removed for the better. But the talents are really where things get interesting, and a lot of the talents were baked into the actual class, and that's the stuff that I want to talk about, okay? So we're going to talk about the baseline abilities, talk about what was removed, and then we're going to go ahead and get straight into the talents. The baseline ability shouldn't take very long. It's actually really simple. A couple things were removed, and one thing was added. All destruction or all warlock specs in general have Shadow Fury now, which is great. Shadow Fury was honestly one of the most iconic, CC spells for warlocks outside of Fear. For a lot of the game, it was removed, and now it's actually back baseline for all warlocks, and I think that is actually super useful. It is no longer a talent, and it's on a 1-minute cooldown, stuns all targets within 8 yards for 3 seconds. Very great utility for anybody that's looking to gain that, maybe like in a dungeon, or even in PvP. It's going to be a really big deal. And then we also no longer have Summon Doomguard. So we only have Summon Infernal. It's an instant 3-minute cooldown, just like it is in Legion. And you can no longer actually use the abilities that Infernal has, but it is a 3-minute cooldown. It is like one of the main big damage cooldowns for Warlocks. It also generates 1 Soul Shard fragment every 0.5 seconds it's alive, which is really, really cool. And also the Supremacy Grimoire was changed, and I'll get to that in just a little bit. But I mean, really outside of that, there wasn't a whole lot of changes. I'm just looking it over to make sure that I didn't miss anything. I mean, except for Havoc having a 25-second cooldown now. It actually has the talent from Legion baked into the actual spell. It's no longer a 45-second cooldown, it's a 25-second cooldown, which I'm sure a lot of Destruction Warlocks are really happy about, because Havoc is so useful to the overall damage rotation. And then with the Conflagrate, you actually have Backdraft baked into Conflag, which is very useful as well. So Conflagrate baseline will reduce the cast time of your next Incinerate or Chaos Bolt by 30% for 10 seconds, and there's a talent that makes that twice as good. I'll talk about that in just a minute. But outside of that, guys, there really isn't a whole lot of amazing things that have been changed from the baseline terms. But I am going to go ahead and dive into the talents, where I think this spec really does thrive and has really come a long way since Legion. Okay, so I'm not really going to waste time talking about talents that are the exact same, like Demonic Circle, Burning Rush, Soul Conduit, all those things. I'm not really going to waste time talking about, but I am going to talk about the talents that have changed. And of course, the very first one is going to be Flashover. Conflagrate grants an additional stack of Backdraft. This is the talent that I was talking about just a moment ago, where Conflag now has baseline Backdraft, but also if you do choose Flashover, you will be getting an additional stack of Backdraft, which means you get 2 casts instead of 1 per Conflagrate, which means that you can have 4 like right off the bat, and I think that's great. And then also Soulfire, which is a brand new talent put into the Destruction Warlock talent. Sorry, excuse me, got cut over my words. But Soulfire is a 1 Soul Shard, 45-second cooldown, 3-second cast, and it does a lot of damage. It actually does about, I think, 30% more damage than a regular Chaos Bolt. So Destruction Warlock has a spell that is a little bit higher cast time, but does a lot of damage, and this is what I'm choosing for single target PvE. It does like an 8k crit on Battle for Azeroth, which is a lot, because I think Chaos Bolts crit for like 6k. Really, really a lot of damage coming out of this. And what's cool about this is you can cast this at like the beginning of a boss fight in a raid, since you do have 3 Soul Shards available to you, and then 45 seconds later you can actually do it again and again. It's just like that big damage cooldown that you can use. And then we have Reverse Entropy, which is different now. It actually allows your spells to have a chance to grant you 15% haste for 8 seconds, which I think is really great. But the second choice here is actually super, super interesting. Chaos Bolt consumes up to 5 seconds of your immolate damage over time on your target, instantly dealing that much damage. Basically buffs your Chaos Bolt to do like 40% more damage. It's really a lot of damage that you consume and like use in a Chaos Bolt, and since Chaos Bolt's used so much in the rotation, this really makes sense because you can keep up your immolate stacks so much with Cataclysm, which I'll talk in just a little bit about. But I definitely choose this one because of how much single target damage this does give. Shadowburn was changed a little bit. It actually is very similar to Conflag. It actually is just a better builder now. It blasts a target for a certain amount of damage, not that much damage. It's a 12-second recharge with 2 charges, and it generates 3 soul shard fragments. So if you don't have Conflag and you're having trouble building soul shard fragments, and then you're going to go ahead and take Shadowburn and generate even more with that instant cast Shadowburn. And if the target does die within 5 seconds, the cooldown on Shadowburn is also reset. So that's nice. Demon Skin was actually added into the Destruction Warlock talents. Really cool. Affliction Warlocks had this before, but now Destruction does as well, which is definitely going to help with the survivability of Destruction Warlocks, especially in PvP. And Dark Pact was changed, and in a way it was actually kind of nerfed. It sacrifices 20% of your current health instead of your pet's now, and it actually shields you for 250% of the sacrifice health, which is basically because in Legion, like you never really had a problem with your pet dying, and when you would sacrifice the health and it never would die, like what's really the point? I think Dark Pact was basically changed to a point where it makes it actually makes sense. Instead of it's just being a shield that doesn't do anything to your pet, it actually like does take away from your health and then gives you a pretty big shield and in trade for that, right? So Fire and Brimstone was changed a little bit. It now hits all your enemies near your target. Your Incinerate does for 40% damage, but also generates a soul shard fragment for each enemy hit. So with Incinerate before, it would literally just hit every target for 100% damage. That was changed to 40% damage, and Cataclysm is pretty much the exact same as it was in Legion. But the really cool part about this talent tier, is that Dark Soul is now on the last talent tier, whereas Hellfire is a brand new talent. It's returned to the game, obviously, but instead of Dark Soul being on this talent tier, basically Dark Soul being where Hellfire was, it makes it so that like you guys would never be able to really choose Cataclysm and Fire and Brimstone on the regular, because you would have such a high value talent being taken or being in that tier. So now I am actually able to play with Cataclysm, and I think Cataclysm is a really nice AoE damage spell to be able to use, and that's why I definitely think that was a great change, putting Dark Soul down there. And then we have Hellfire, which is pretty much the same as it was. It actually costs 4 soul shard fragments per second and deals damage to yourself and damage all around you. You can actually move while channeling Hellfire. There's really nothing different about Hellfire, but it's nice to see that it's returned. But it also does replace Rain of Fire, so that's something to keep in mind. I don't know if I would ever choose Hellfire in its current state. I think that it's kind of a weak ability, but at least it's there, and it does kind of change over the overall talents of Destruction. We have Dark Fury that reduces the cooldown of Shadow Fury by 15 seconds, and competing that with that is Mortal Coil and Demonic Circle. So if you're looking for a little bit of self-healing and survivability, you're going to go with Mortal Coil, Dark Fury for a little bit more AoE CC, and Demonic Circle for mobility, probably more so in PvP, right? Okay. So we have Roaring Blaze, which burns the target. Conflag actually does a dot and puts a damage ability, like a little bit of a damage dot on your target. This did replace one of the Grim Warriors. I actually replaced Grim Warrior of Service, which means you don't get an extra spell lock. You don't get that extra ability from your pet anymore. That's no longer the Destruction Warlock kit. And then you have Grim Warrior of Supremacy, which is completely changed, completely reworked. When you have an Infernal active, every soul shard you spend increases the damage of your Chaos Bolt by 5%, which is a pretty big deal. It allows you to get a lot more single target damage, but you no longer have that Infernal or Doom Guard as a permanent pet, which I think was a better change. I didn't really like those pets all the time. I think the whole point of having like a greater demon to summon every now and then kind of gives you a fun cooldown to have. And Grimoire of Supremacy always kind of took that mechanic out since it was just a permanent pet. So it's nice to see the cooldown of the greater demons being more relevant, and now it's actually just Infernal. So Infernal gives you a lot of soul shards, and also every time you spend a soul shard that the Infernal will generate for you, you'll gain a lot of damage out of that, which is cool. And Grimoire of Sacrifice isn't really that different. You just sacrifice your pet and you deal 400, you deal some shadow damage every now and then. Nothing really crazy. Soul Conduit's the same, not really going to talk about that. Channel Demon Fire is pretty much the same, but it's also a huge amount of AoE damage, and I think it's awesome to note that the Cataclysm combination and like basically you can Cataclysm a bunch of mobs like a trash pack and every 30 seconds, and then you can Channel Demon Fire on top of that, and it's really a huge amount of AoE damage. I kill pretty much everything instantly. Whenever I pull like 5 or 6 mobs, like a bunch of ravens over there, I actually kill pretty much everything with just those 2 spells. And Dark Soul was completely changed, actually. So before, it would increase your damage by 20% for 20 seconds. Now it actually increases your critical strike chance by 30% for 12 seconds. And it's in a much better tier slot throughout your talents and the overall design of that. And the reason why it increases critical strike is because not only does your Soulfire increase damage for the higher amount of critical strike that you have, but also Chaos Bolt does as well. So it kind of enhances your overall damage because it gives a lot of your other spells better crit, but also increases your Chaos Bolt and your Soulfire damage flat out, which is very, very nice. I gotta be honest, guys, like this class in particular is really, really interesting. I'm happy that the Destruction and Demonology Warlock specs that I've been able to test are just very nice. Basically, I'm going to pull like 5 mobs right here, and then I can hit them with like a Cataclysm, Soulfire, and then I can like put a Rain of Fire down and then hit Channel Demon Fire, and like look at this. I just destroy 5 mobs right there, and I think that that's going to be very similar in dungeons. And on top of that, like you can really change this class to do a huge amount of single target damage, which I think is really cool. Being able to balance like this spec kind of reminds me of like an immobile Arcane Mage in a way. And I mean, since I main Arcane Mage, I think that's really cool. I mean, you have like big damage cooldowns like Infernal. And then you have a huge amount of AoE damage with Cataclysm, Rain of Fire, Channel Demon Fire, and then you have a huge amount of single target damage with Chaos Bolts and Incinerates, and having that with Havoc on a lower cooldown now, which I think is really cool, and being able to change your spec pretty much entirely. Like I can just go completely single target spec with Soulfire, Reverse Entropy, or Internal Combustion, more so Internal Combustion, and then like I could also play like, I guess Cataclysm is still the same. You can play like Roaring Blaze for more overall single target damage with Conflag Dot, and then play like Dark Soul on top of that. Like I really like that there's a difference between like AoE spec and single target spec, and I feel like all of that meshes together really well. So guys, what I'm actually going to do is show you a little bit of leveling footage just to like give you a bit of an example of how this class works in the DPS rotation, and then I will see you guys at the end of the video. Alright guys, thank you very much for watching this video, just looking into the Destro Warlock. I definitely am looking forward to this one. I've been really happy with all of the Warlock specs on the BFA Alpha. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to hit a big thumbs up and like this video. You can also subscribe to my YouTube channel and keep up to date with all of the Battle for Azeroth stuff happening. And leave a comment down below what your thoughts are on the Destruction Warlock and if you're going to be checking it out in Battle for Azeroth as well. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all tomorrow.